Every damn day. Hello, everyone. It's Jerry at the Fledge, and welcome to Season 2, Episode 23 of Every Damn Day. And today I have Raven Norris on the show, and we're going to be talking about women in science and all kinds of things. So how you doing today, Raven?
I'm doing great. I'm happy to be on the show for the second time. I miss you.
You didn't mean the second time today because we did have a technical, but
Well, it's technically the third time then, but second time, second season.
it was
Last
one of
season.
my favorite shows last season.
It better
So-
be. I'm your daughter.
Yeah, in case you don't know, Raven is my daughter, Shannon and I's daughter, and she's out in Los Angeles. Well, tell us a little bit of your story. What was your path to get to Los Angeles?
So I got a job working at Cedars-Sinai, working in genetic science, and that's in like Beverly Grove area. So I was living in Studio City with my boyfriend, who was going to Icon and studying music. But then we ended up moving to Beverly Grove area so I could be closer to my job. And it's really nice. It's more city vibe. I wish I could be closer to like Santa Monica because there's beaches, but I was just talking to my friend today who's moving to LA, and she's like, where should I live? So there's lots of different cities with different vibes. So I like Beverly Hills because I'm working there, but I probably would pick something else to live if it was more about like nature or what to do.
And you're qualified for this job because of your degree from Michigan State. You want to tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, so I started at Loyola and was just studying pre-med and biology, and then I wanted to go to Michigan State and move closer to home for a couple of different reasons, but I wanted to switch my major to genetics. So I got a bachelor's degree in genetics and finished that in 2021 spring, and then got a job in July, I think, and moved in September. So I've been here for like 5 or 6 months.
Yeah,
Crazy to say.
was August, right? I think we did the show from out there around your birthday, right?
Yeah, so 6 months.
Yeah.
But it's crazy, half a year.
So you also, and this is actually going to lead somewhere, but you also are a model, right? And you were doing modeling here in Chicago and now in LA a bit.
Yeah.
My question, or the reason I kind of pointed that out, was a lot of times we don't see young women getting into science and getting into genetics. And there's a big push to make sure that we do have some gender equality there. What made you want to get into science?
Probably my mom and my dad.
It's okay. It was more your mom. I accept that.
You love science. You love like the physics and the philosophy and like that type of stuff, which is also a lot of my interests. And then mom just like loves all type of science. She was like always like my science teacher for a lot of years. But you actually told me to get in genetics specifically, so I wouldn't have went into genetics if it wasn't you telling me to do that. So you guys both had a huge impact of why I did that, but I really love it. Like you guys more kind of showed it to me and showed me why it's really cool, and then once I knew that, I was just kind of addicted to it. But I really like math and I really like animals, and science is kind of like a barrier in between the two. So I just like to study about like I guess why we're here, explanations to why we're here, and yeah, so it's really cool.
So getting into science, was that like, were there stigmas that were associated with that for you? Like, I remember one time we were having coding club at the Fledge, and a young man came up with his mother and his sister, and I asked the mother if the daughter was going to stay for coding club, and she laughed and said, "Oh no, she doesn't code. She's a cheerleader," or something like that.
Yeah.
And I could see the look on the young lady's face that she wanted to come. She wanted to do something. Did
Yeah.
you have any barriers like that you felt?
Yeah, I feel like definitely in the medical field you see a lot of like men doctors, especially when I was little. But I feel like that's changing a lot now. There's like also a stigma in school that like we learned about, like boys kind of don't like women get rewarded for being smart. It's cool, like
Mm,
it's a good like you get a good stigma for that. Where boys, when you're young and immature, it's not necessarily like the coolest thing to be smart, which she seems stupid. Like you think it doesn't really happen, but if I'm like looking back into like first grade, second grade, like that actually does happen. So men actually like women actually dominate in the science industry because they love school. It's been rewarding for them. They like studying. They have good habits around that. It's peaceful for them to kind of do that type of thing. So I think a lot of women actually do end up going into science, but once you look at like job titles, you'll see like women kind of cut off at like a research associate or like a lab manager, but it's less likely for them to be a PI.
mhm,
And I actually had a coworker talk to me about how like women that are end up being like professional doctors have like higher divorce rates or don't end up having kids. So there's like less of them. So they definitely
yeah.
are underrepresented. But a lot of jobs are making it like so they have to do like 50% of like who they're hiring and stuff. So like there definitely is like stigma of like how you're treated like day to day, but also there's like management companies that are coming into scientific spaces that are like making it equal and trying to keep it like up to date.
Do you so again, we don't really want to talk about your hospital and your particular situation because you're doing research and you have NDAs and all these things.
Yeah.
Um, but do you think what could we do as a community, as parents, as school districts to one encourage more women in science, or don't we need to do anything because that's where it's going already?
I think that's where it's going already, but we should encourage women in science. I definitely think that women bring like a lot of different perspectives to science. They're nurturing and they're caring, and people can say that's a stigma. But also like women are conditioned into being that because that's like the expected stigma. So maybe all like men and women can both be caring and nurturing, but at the end of the day women are being kind of conditioned into that role, so they can kind of see like some perspectives, I guess, that like men wouldn't, not all men would think about. But there's definitely like a lot of differences like in gender for like the health industry. Like we have different type of enzymes, hormones, anatomy, so it's like really important for us to look at like both genders on like under a science model, and where some people wouldn't really think about that and they think there's no difference. It's actually very critical in a lot of different ways. And we've had a lot of postdocs work in like the Heart Institute where I'm working at, and they've come out with lots of papers and studies that you can look up, Cedars-Sinai women's studies in science. And you'll see that there's a lot of differences in between like the anatomy and physiology, and it's super important to study both.
Do you think that if white males dominate the medical field and the research field,
Mhm.
then white male problems are going to be researched and dominated more? Is
Yeah,
that what some of those studies show?
yeah, definitely. I think so, but I would say that the management companies are actually making like a good effort into making it more diverse now. Um, but yeah, definitely like whoever's
Yeah.
the focus and who's ever giving the money are the people that are going to fund what they think is the most important. So it's good, especially if you become like a PI. Like I was going to talk about different career paths, I guess you can take after
Yeah.
getting a master's in science. But yeah, so
Well,
uh,
let's lead into that a little bit because you've got some decisions you have to make in the coming year or two,
yeah.
and you're kind of sorting out that next piece. Tell
Mhm.
us about what some of those options or career paths could be.
Yeah. So if you get a bachelor's in science, there's a few different career paths that you can take if you want to go towards the research and medical route. So one thing is you could work in industry, which is you could go work for Pfizer or some big like pharmaceutical brand, and you just are doing like data results. So they already have protocols and stuff all written out for you, and you're basically just repeating those experiments again and again to get data. And then you could go into what I'm doing right now, which is like a research associate or a lab technician, which is basically someone who's working in a research lab and you're testing new things all the time. So I work for a nonprofit, so we usually get grants per whatever we're trying to solve. And then we just like work on that project until we write articles for that. And then that's pretty much it. So we find things, put articles out, and we just keep trying new experiments and putting information out for other doctors. Or you could, if you don't want to go into research science, you could go into like clinical science, which is like working on clinical trials for new medicines. And then you could also go back to school and get a PhD, or you could go back to school and go into do a master's in something medical related, or go to medical school. So a PhD can usually be paid for you by a company if you work there. Like Cedars has a really good program for where you can they'll pay you like $41K a year to get your PhD, which is like pretty much what you could make before getting the PhD anyways. And I think it's a 4-year program. So then you can get your PhD, and then you're technically a postdoc in research science, which then you can continue different experiments and publish yourself and become like the public investigator of science, or like the main doctor of science. So that's like a doctor comparable to like a surgeon, but in research. Or you go to medical school and become some type of doctor, or get a master's, which is what I'm looking at to do next. I'm in between either going back to school for medical school and maybe working in pediatrics or something, or genetics, or getting a master's in genetic counseling, which is only a 2-year program. And you basically just help people understand their genetic diseases and come to terms with them.
Yeah. Well, and I don't know. I keep wanting to talk to you more and more about that. I don't think we should have all this conversation on the live show,
Mm-hmm.
but do you have this is a complicated question. What are you leaning towards? What are the benefits, or what are the things that you really like about all
Yeah.
of the paths?
Yeah. So I would say that, like, especially being a woman, because there are a few spots, I guess, for women, like, but also since there's so many smart women, there's a lot of women applying for those positions. So, like, even though they're trying to make it fair, be 50-50, that might not make it fair if there's 70% good female candidates, because everybody's started good at science, but 50% of their spots are getting taken away, to be equal, So sometimes you have to look at, like, should we really be going for like equality, or should we be going for like, I don't know. I guess it's like an ethical thing to talk about, but so
No, I like what you're saying though there, because of the actual trying to correct a particular situation could actually restrain it
yeah,
as the pendulum kind of swings back and forth.
yeah, which
So,
is like definitely seen happen. It's really hard for like even like Asian Americans. I've noticed like there's a lot of Asian Americans and women, I would say, in like my space. So there is a lot of people that are applying for it that aren't getting those positions because they're trying to make it equally distributed against things. But then there's people that are trying really hard and like have really good credentials that are getting turned away over someone that might not have as good ones to make it equal. But like I see both sides,
yeah.
So, but I definitely think for women though, that's like a bigger topic than like even like race. Like you should be less. Race is more important, or we should make it equal, I guess is what I'm saying. If there's more women that are fit for the thing, I think that more women should be able to have those spaces.
Well, I think that, you said something really interesting to me earlier on about how the young boy is kind of, oh, you're a sissy because you're smart, that type of BS.
Yeah.
And the young woman gets more affirmation as
Mm-hmm.
she excels in different things, and so is encouraged to be smart, where, we kind of have to hide it, if
Yeah.
you will. And that then puts more women in a position to start out in science.
Yeah.
But then on the flip side of that, when it gets into who are the bosses right now, who are the owners right now, who are
Yeah.
the people in control right now, they
Mhm.
still lean with towards the people that look like them and
Right.
have the same gender as them or what
Yeah.
have you.
Mhm.
That seems like a bigger problem to solve.
Yeah.
Uh,
And like it's also comes down to like a psychology like standpoint is like positive reinforcement like works. So if like you should be telling somebody that they are something, even if they're not, they'll probably start turning into that because that's what they're getting. So if you reward someone for being kind, like if you tell a kid all the time, like, oh, you're so kind, even though they're not maybe being the most kind, they'll see that they get a reward from it and like more want to do that more often because they see it's a nice feeling to be kind.
yeah. So I look back at you as a child, if you don't mind, during our show here.
Mhm.
And, we always laugh about your kill the government drawing that you did. You
Yeah.
were a hero to chicken farmers everywhere for the fighting for the rights there.
Yeah.
What we did with the skateboarding and all of that. Which
Mhm.
path could you see yourself going on that could make the most impact for others to be able to follow for someone 10 years younger than you right now? How can you blaze a trail through this? Because
Mhm.
it's important to have more women doctors, it's important to have more women researchers, it's important to have. Why is that important? I'm
Yeah.
making that claim.
Well, there's two questions.
Yeah,
I think the path that like other women should try to use is like the advocacy type and like using your voice. I feel like going up for executive director positions or going into leadership or like joining a club and running for president, like you can really I feel like that makes the most impact on like getting into science or doing things because it builds confidence. Like I think at the end of the day, building your confidence is the best thing that a young woman can do. And just trying everything and becoming comfortable in things that are uncomfortable because at the end of the day, no matter what you want to do, you can be successful in it.
but if you were running the hospital or you were running or if you're the PI,
Mhm.
does that allow you to take some of that bias away? Like,
Yeah,
where do you think you'd be impactful?
what do you mean? Where would I be impactful? Like, what would I bring to the table as a PI?
Well, no, I think more so if you were setting an example or getting rid of stigma or even in a position to hire, how could you bring more women into the fields that
Yeah.
you're working in?
Yeah, well, I was thinking, like, I really just feel like it's like education and like building a sense of community, like either building like a TikTok where people can watch like different things in science and just see women do cool things. Like, I feel like it's like exposure and education and like communicating together. Like, the community aspect is really important because, like, if you're just watching someone do something, you can say, like, oh, that's really cool. I wish I could do that, like, but it's far away, I probably won't ever have a chance to do it. But if you have a community where people are constantly saying like, oh, I did this, it was really easy, like I did this, do you want to come with me to this, I feel like that's the best way to get people involved and like to get those biases away because then you can like talk about issues that need to be solved and you get people into positions through connections. And connections are super important. You can like be prepared all your life and get prepared, but connections will give you these opportunities that you're spending your time being prepared for. So I feel like building a community and getting involved with each other and exposing each other to other things, and like giving to others. Like it's not bad to tell people shortcuts to things just because it took you forever to do it.
Right.
Um, like I think it's really important to share with others like how you're benefiting because people will open up to you. And I feel like the way that I've been most successful and like what I've done is I'm extremely honest and I like to be vulnerable and I like to say like really personal things about myself to people and different things because I know that like I'll get the same response in return. So I just feel like be giving with people and like build a sense of community so you guys can help each other and lean on each other.
Yeah. I want to go back to genetics for a second.
Mhm.
Why is this so important?
Yeah, genetics is extremely important because genetics is individuality. And like, I feel like we look at things as such like a whole, perspective, like we always want one law that will fix something or one cure, like one pill we can take to solve all problems. But the fact of the matter is there's so many different there's so many different, it's very individual to each person. Like we have
Mhm.
so much diversity, whether it be like in medicine, where you live, like there's so much diversity. So you have to really take into consideration those things. So I just feel like genetics is like the future of medicine because it's looking at your individual history, like your ancestors, like from lines and lines and lines of generations, and like it just makes it more like beneficial to you as an individual, I guess.
See, you know I am against the industrialization of medicine and how I hate these medical delivery systems and how healthcare isn't community based.
Yeah,
And you just shocked me because you and I have never talked about something that you
yeah,
just said. You what you just said takes the industrialization part out of medicine and
yeah,
makes it unique. So
right,
I always use the example of a cobbler who
yeah,
used to make a shoe that fit your foot perfectly. So if you had a
mhm,
big bump on the side of your foot, the shoe would be made around that or it
yeah,
would be made to accommodate.
mhm,
But with mass production, we get size 8, 8.5, 9, 9.5, 10, so on and so forth.
yeah,
And it's not unique anymore. It's making us be components to fit into this world. And you
yeah.
flip that with genetics.
Yeah. And like Cedars actually does something really interesting, where you can donate like your specimens to research. And a lot of people are like, I don't want to do that. I don't want to have my cells, like cause another disease or something like that. But it's actually extremely beneficial because these medicines and these cures that they're making are like literally by use with your genetics. So it's only going to help like you as a person and like your generations to come, like your kids, your cousins. Like it's actually extremely beneficial to you. And there's a bunch of privacy laws and stuff about like they don't even put your name with the samples. It's pretty much just like patient XYZ. Um, but I definitely think people should look into that because it is beneficial. And I think that there's a lot of stigma on science, and um, I've seen science become like really, really political, and it's really sad because the more you look at science, the more it like lines up with spirituality, um, and it lines up with math. It lines up with a lot of different things. So
Mhm.
I definitely think that people should kind of do their own research about things and test their own scientific experiments and see how it works before they believe somebody that doesn't have a degree in science claiming that science isn't real.
Yeah. So speaking of doing our own experiments, are we going to start a biohacking lab someday?
Yes, I want to. It's really hard to get approved to have these things in your lab. I've been trying to kind of figure it out, and seeing how they collect different instruments and stuff, and it's extremely expensive, but we'll get there.
We'll get some funding.
Hmm.
Um, let's talk about, you know, the whole science debate really got magnified during COVID,
Yeah.
right?
Hmm.
And people, oh, I believe this, I believe that. And that's never really how we're taught science. It's not
Yeah.
about, you can have a hypothesis, but at the end of the day, the data makes
Yeah.
the decision. Um, so COVID in general, though,
Mhm.
you've been back to Michigan, you've been out in LA. What's different about what's happening in Los Angeles as opposed to what's happening in Michigan?
I would say that we're a lot more like mask friendly. Like we wear masks a lot more here. We never had a time period where we're not wearing masks. We always have to show your vaccination card even if you're going into a restaurant. So I feel like they're a little bit more protective over
Hmm.
things like that. Also, things are extremely busy. Like I can't even order half of the materials for my experiments because things are so backed up with COVID, with people either quitting their jobs and people being really understaffed, or to people using certain materials and are like the places that we would usually be ordering materials from are just booked with COVID mask production or hand sanitizer productions and things like that. So it's definitely like affected our like supply and demand.
Yeah.
But with so many people here, I think they need to be a little bit more cautious. But yeah, it's similar to Michigan where you have people that understand it and people that just are completely against it.
Yeah. How are your cases starting to go down out there?
Um, no, I think it's pretty high right now. I think in like a week though it'll go back down because everybody's gonna have a surge
Yeah.
um, at one time, but it will go back down. But it's never completely at zero. It's like it goes down pretty low to a few patients, I guess, per hospital. But yeah, I don't think that they've had like complete control over it anywhere.
All right. Well, thanks for that update on us or for us.
Yeah.
Um, as we start to wrap up here, I thought of a question as we were talking about these subjects today. Did you ever have like a science partner, like a friend that you can remember from a long time ago, and you don't have to say their name, but
Mhm.
who kind of dropped out of science and you thought, why the hell didn't they stick with this?
Yeah, but they're probably making more money than me right now.
But that's okay,
Yeah, that's
right?
okay. But yeah, they're our friends that I feel like have dropped out. Some just weren't interested into it and thought that that was like one of the only ways to make money. And just because a lot, that's like a big stigma, is just go be a doctor or a lawyer and you'll make money. So people just all go to be pre-law and pre-med just because they think they can do it, and then they realize that they don't want to spend their whole life reading, which is a good thing. Like it's a good thing if you're not interested in doing those things, you shouldn't push yourself to do it just because you think that it's can make money. You should do something that makes you happy. But yeah, there are friends that I feel like should have stayed in science. It's really interesting. And there's a lot of friends I've gotten to stick with science and not give up because they've seen me do different career paths and I've taught them about different paths that they can take. Um, but yeah, I've had like lots of good friends in science. The only friends I've made from MSU have been in science classes. So
Yeah. So, two things. What do you want to say to the little girls about science? And
uh,
what do you want to say to the older women that are
mm,
ahead of you in this right now about what you would like them to trailblaze for you?
yeah. The little girls, I would say, just keep trying everything and build confidence in what you're doing, and don't be afraid to reach out to other women. I feel like I've always been scared to reach out to like my women teachers and stuff because they've come off as like just older than me and more mature than me. But every time I've reached out to them and asked them for help or been vulnerable about myself, they've been opened up to me so much, and they need that just as much as you. So like find a mentor, find someone that you can talk to, and that can really help you growing up. And talk about what you're feeling because people will try to make you seem like you can't be too emotional or you shouldn't be talking about things or like keep your hardships internal. But just build a community, talk about what you're going for, ask for help, and then just keep following your passions. And then older women, I would just say step up and take authority in whatever you're doing. You should run for leadership positions and think about what you want to change about your job. Even if you're really happy, is there anything that you can add? Even if it seems like, oh, they would never take time to do that, like you could be the change in that. So I would say use like how far you are so far to just like take authority in whatever you're doing and follow whatever you want to do. Build confidence.
I love it. Thank you so very much. You got anything more that we didn't talk about that you
Um,
want to put in there real quick?
I don't think so. If anybody has any questions about science or has young girls that need cool scientific blogs to look at or look at different career paths, they can hit me up.
All
I'll show
right.
you some cool things. But yeah, always do your own research.
Yeah. All right. Well, that is another episode of Every Damn Day. We love you all. Thank you so very much, Raven, for sharing your story and your thoughts about women in science. And love you very much. And we will see you all tomorrow. What's that?
I said I love you more.
Oh, I love you more.